Welcome home, friends. I'm Tanya Long, and this is Reset, where purpose meets possibility. Each week, we share conversations with thought leaders, innovators, and the dreamers and doers who are reshaping the future of work, technology, longevity, and purpose. Whether you're navigating AI's impact, reimagining your career, or searching for deeper meaning, you're in the right place. So settle in, open your mind, and let's explore what happens when purpose meets possibility. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Reset, where purpose meets possibility. I'm Tanya Long, and today I am just delighted, honored, and so excited to bring my new friend, Enoch Allotey, to the table. I met you about a month ago, I think. And Enoch is so remarkable. I'm going to let him tell you who he is and what he does. But when I think about Enoch, I think about ancient wisdom. And I think I've titled this episode something like Ancient Wisdom Meets Artificial Intelligence, because Enoch is a tech-minded strategist. He's also an attorney. And he works in the medical field in AI and data, and I would say future-looking trends. So he's fascinating from a technical perspective, but I think Enoch and we bonded over culture. We bonded over, if I could say, spiritualness and family. And Enoch's just taken a big trip back home. We'll talk about that as we move along. So Enoch, welcome to Reset. I'm so happy that you're here and that our audience gets to meet you. Would you please tell them about what you're working on right now?
First of all, thank you, Anya. I'm so excited for this conversation. And I'm also very pleased by this opportunity to meet your audience, interact with them, and present myself to them as well. In terms of what I'm doing now at work, that is, I'm still strategizing for my company, but now I'm very consciously looking at the opportunities that exist in the digital space that aren't leveraged yet by my company, right? And generally in healthcare, all the opportunities that can enable other communities to benefit from the inventions and the wonderful treatments that our organization is putting out there that is untapped, channeling that energy into some of our strategy work. And primarily, generally, as a broad theme, that's what I'm doing at work. Personally, looking to grow, looking to connect with wonderful people like yourself, and also being able to share some of the values that I have come to possess over time with everyone else I connect.
Yeah. Values. Values are often informed from home, right? We grow and develop and modify them as we mature, but they start at home. And you just had a trip. You live on the East Coast of the United States, have for 16 or 20 years, as I recall. But home is somewhere else. Tell us about where home is for you.
Well, the home is this place that was formerly known as the Gold Coast until 1957, the British colony until it gained independence. And in modern day, it's known as Ghana, the gateway to Africa, we call it. It's in the Gulf of Guinea, borders the Gulf of Guinea, the western part of Africa. That's where I was born and raised. And like you say, values are inculcated from home. And I am very proud to say I sourced a good amount of that from my loving family, my community, and Ghana at home.
I've had several friends from Ghana and Nigeria, and culture is so strong in those people, the culture of where they came from. And I think it compels them to be intentional about creating culture in their present day in a different setting. And so those friends are really interesting people. And now I am privileged to add you to that list. So you just came back from a 2 or 3 week trip. You've been home. This this podcast is about resets. It's about making changes and transitions. And so you've had lots of opportunities to start new things. But if we go all the way back to your childhood in what's now Ghana, one of the interesting things when we think about you setting your values is that you learn to live in differences. I had notes from when we talked that you were the only Christian family in a Muslim neighborhood. And that was and I look at that, with the wisdom of 50 years to say, so you learned tolerance. You learned not just tolerance, but to embrace differences and be curious because you are incredibly curious. So what was it like when little Enoch was running around on his bike? What was it like? Or did you even have awareness of an experience where there were differences in beliefs that are pretty significant? And did you notice that as a child when you were the only Christian family in the neighborhood, or how did
Yeah.
that impact you?
Yeah. I think it's a common place to find that level of diversity, you will,
Okay.
in Ghana, at least in my family and in my environment. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I was aware that we went to church on Sunday. My cousins, my friends, and folks that lived around us
Mm-hmm.
prayed a couple of times a day, and especially on Fridays, they went to the mosque, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at certain times throughout the year, they would fast. And so they'll wake up really early to have their meals before the sun
Yep.
came up. And at a certain time, after the
Mm-hmm.
fasting period is over, there'd be a big feast to
Mm-hmm.
celebrate. And they would bring over some of the, celebratory feasts over, including,
To
you
share.
know, you share, right? So
Yeah.
I remember my neighbors where it was such a huge family, they would slaughter a cow for the celebration. They'll bring us to my house a portion of that slaughter. And so for a good portion of my life, my friends were all Muslims. And it wasn't necessarily a difference in the way we are brought up. We just approached the divine differently.
Yeah.
And that was put into me very early on. We ate the same kinds of food. We respected our elders. We
Mm-hmm.
had every single value you could think of, except when we went to church and when they prayed.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
not until I moved into broader society and most prominently the US, that difference was prominent. Because in my family, I had uncles and relatives who had married Christians and vice versa, right? It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a huge distinction. We were just people who approached our divine purpose and our appreciation for divinity different.
Um, we think a lot these days about religion being divisive, but I think you and I both had upbringings where we were fortunate to realize early on that it's just, you said it very simply, but they go to church at a different time, they have some different traditions, but that doesn't divide us, or it doesn't have to divide us. And
Thank you.
I love that there are people like you and me walking around that promote that it doesn't have to divide us, that those textures in society are what make us all interesting. Um, so when you were around 20 when you came to the US?
The fun fact about it, I arrived at JFK New York on my 20th birthday.
Oh, what an
That
amazing
was
birthday
like,
present.
they can't forget it. We'll never forget it. Right on the money. But then I just realized that an interesting fact that I didn't mention earlier. I went to boarding school, high school in Ghana, which is boarding school, and it was built by the Catholic missionaries.
Okay.
But so it was still a Catholic boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
The cool thing about that is we had a mosque on campus for the Muslim students, right? There was a mosque on campus that allowed them to practice. It
At a
did not
Catholic
at a Catholic
institution. So
boarding
that's
school.
wonderful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that's the level of tolerance that I'm used to, the level of kind of mixing and accepting that I'm used to compared to boarding game. My 20th birthday, 2007, I arrived in JFK, and that in itself was a reset. And, talk more about it. That began a different avenue, if you will. If you're looking at my life as a roadmap, that's like a different avenue that
Mm-hmm.
that that propelled into a different version of myself,
Yeah.
different values, in addition to what I held, some contradictory, but still different.
Mm-hmm.
But also an opportunity to present a better version of myself to the world
Yeah.
in the long run. And I've appreciated every single aspect of this journey so far.
Yeah. Well, you've been a striver, and since you landed here at 20, you've taken several turns. We may or may not. It's your choice to go through that. But what is remarkable to me is that you kept hitting on things until you went to law school. You were so tell us a little about that so that we can bridge that to um all the different things you've learned and how those contribute to the fullness of what you're able to do now.
Yeah. So, my ambition initially was to be a banker. I thought my dad
Mhm.
was a banker. I wanted to be a banker.
Yeah.
Um,
What you
and
knew.
then it started off, I didn't have a good sense of what it entailed or
Mhm.
what that journey would be like. The resources available to me were folks in the medical field that I had been introduced to. And so that idea started to shift over time where I'm realizing perhaps I'll be more suited for something else. It looked at the time very far away. Um, and so when I started off, I went to community college and I wanted to still see what else I could do. I couldn't be a banker. I'm not sure I wanted to go to nursing school.
Mhm.
And so maybe be a doctor, but
Mhm.
that was still a possibility. So I took liberal arts courses. And then I ended up having to take a science course. I took biology. I thought this is fascinating. And this isn't too hard at the time. Like, why
Mhm.
not? I was
Mhm.
like, ended up doing biology. I said, liberal arts option at the Bronx Community College. And then when I moved on to college, I realized that maybe medicine it is, right? So I went on
Yep.
pre-med, did biology, still not entirely convinced, but I was inspired because my upbringing and my culture were very few. I joke about this all the time. There are only four things you could be in my setting, right? You could be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, or useless, right? Like everything else.
That fourth category.
And the
Okay.
fourth is like a catch-all. And so being a doctor was, much preferable, at least for me, than to be a nurse. So I went
Mhm.
to Stony Brook. I decided to take a break in between going from undergraduate to the he'd see what the world would looks like in terms of work. The first
Mhm.
job I had landed was in a lab, in a pharmaceutical, nutraceutical lab, and they wanted a quality control chemist. And I
Mhm.
kind of hit all of the benchmarks in terms of
Okay.
education. So they hired me, and I learned a ton about human health, the impact of medicine, the interactivity of medicine, to different
Mhm.
genetic makeups. It was fascinating. But then 1 year became two became three became four, and time was fast spent. So I had to make a choice of what to do to further my education. But I wasn't really sold on medical school.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
at that time, I was doing reverse engineering, where I was taking these drugs that were almost about to hit their patent expiration,
Mhm.
figuring out what was in it, and then sharing with the organization what we needed to do on the science end to produce it. But there was a whole business discussion outside of what I was doing, but that I wasn't aware of, that entailed the finances, but also the intellectual property that was going
Yep.
to result from that. And so
Mhm.
in one of those meetings, I was fortunate enough to have overheard the mention of IP. What are these folks talking about? Mind you, I want to go to medical school. And I thought I knew everything that had to do with making medicine. So that night, I investigated what IP was and discovered it was intellectual property. And it is actually at the crossroad or the apex of law and science. That's where they met. This IP is where they met. And in
Mm-hmm.
that moment, I decided, you know what? I don't think I want to go to I want to know more about this IP stuff because it's enabling access. This is the one thing. Like I did the science, I gave all the data, but there is something else that is actually pushing the drug to the last mile, which is the business decision and the intellectual property around it. So I focused on that, and that day I switched my mind, my path, and went to law school, and that's how I became a lawyer in pursuit of intellectual property and improving access for all.
What a bold, audacious vision you had. And how quickly it turned. You overheard someone talking about IP and you said, I want to know more about that.
Right.
And you looked at it and the way you described it just now, it's like it just hit you that this interests me. And this
Yes.
is also an accumulation of the things that I've been working toward and the things that I enjoy. So, how blessed, lucky, choose your word, but how wonderful that you bumped into that conversation. Otherwise, you might have been a miserable podiatrist.
Oh my God.
But you really do. It seems like you've landed on a career that takes the best of all of your talent, skills, and joy, things that create joy within you. And I love your mission statement. So,
Thank you. I mean, it's ever evolving, right? I think
yeah.
I'm learning every day, and my single most consistent prayer is that I still continue to get the divine revelation of my purpose. Right? What is it
Mm,
that I'm designed
yeah.
and destined to do? And
Mhm.
it reveals itself in multiple stages. I embrace it in all forms. But I
Mhm.
think as I evolve, the values that I'm bringing are also evolving. And at the time, that's what I saw. It hit me like in bad bricks. Like, this is
Mhm.
it. This is what you need to do to move
Yep.
on. And then once I was done with law school, I'm not, like I said, going in was for IP and access. I
Mhm.
wasn't necessarily keen on practicing in the traditional sense, going to
Right.
court and, you know, so I ended up going into public policy and government affairs. So that was the
Mhm.
first, entry back into pharmaceuticals. But I
Yep.
did public policy, both in the US and in the Middle East and Africa, policy and government affairs.
Mhm.
And then, but prior to that, whilst I was in law school, I had the opportunity to work for the Department of State, intern for the Department of State,
Okay.
doing AI research. And that's
Mm.
what gave birth to my interest.
Yeah.
It was a special project that wanted someone who had experience in bio, pharma, but also had a leg into the legal regulatory space.
Mhm.
And I was recruited by the division that I worked with to do that. And that also started another avenue or maybe a bullet for her in
Mhm.
my journey that
Well,
kind of led this way.
love it. Love it. You just introduced the word AI, which, we knew we would get to, but I can't help but think that you didn't grow up thinking about AI. You probably didn't grow up thinking a lot about tech. Um, it's similar for me. Most people that know me know that I was, born and raised on a tobacco farm in Tennessee. Um, and so we didn't grow up in cultures or at a time when tech was as prevalent as it is now. Um, so how do you think AI, um, well, I'm curious how it's working in Ghana now, because Ghana has grown up just like the world has grown up. But keeping it to what you just said about your career evolution, um, what what are the parallels that you bring with your values from Ghana that were not um, technologically driven that have influenced how you work in AI and really emerging technologies now?
Yeah. So, like culturally, no single person is an island. My dad reminds me of that all the
Yeah.
time. Well,
Yeah.
we're all connected, whether we like it
Hmm.
or not. There's no way you
Yes.
can exist as an
Hmm.
island. And when you look at artificial intelligence and what I choose to look at or focus on, is the ability to deepen those relationships. It's the ability for
Mm.
us to connect. It's the ability for us to reap the benefits that would have cost us a ton of investment, right? And in
Mm.
places like Ghana, because it's kind of ingrained, the culture
Yeah.
requires that connection. Adding on the layer of artificial intelligence as an enabler to these cultural outcomes is indeed, to me, the best that you can ask for. So I'll give you an example. When we look at currency, right, the
Hmm.
Ghanaian currency, the cities, in Ghana, there are a lot more people using a telecommunication platform, a fintech
Hmm.
transaction, than there are people actually using the currency. And so you can pay, the way
Hmm.
it works is the telephone company or the cell phone company has your phone number, and that phone number is in essence a bank account.
Wow.
And
Yep.
so you can deposit money on that account.
Hmm.
You can withdraw money from that account. You can loan folks from that account. You can take a loan from that account.
Hmm.
And you can use the system to make purchases as well. And so
Hmm.
when I was there last, you could pay food at the restaurant, at the market, buy gas, fill your
Hmm.
water, pay for utility, all
Yep.
on your phone. But just recently, Ghana was recognized as number one globally by the NMRI, an organization that does ranking for
Okay.
financial platform and usage, has been
Perfect.
ranked number
Thank you.
one globally for using mobile money transactions. And this is a technology that wasn't necessarily built with that in mind, but the
No.
usage has changed lives. And so now compound that with something that artificial intelligence can enable. Because the adoption, once it gets a hold, it's being used more than
Hmm.
anywhere else with places like that. Once they find the benefit of it and the utility is there, it
Hmm.
sees a lot more advantage and it gets more appreciation over time.
So that's interesting to me, and I want to be respectful when I say this, but I wouldn't have thought of the Ghana culture society being like, you know, like the Valley, like the Bay Area, right? There's just a difference in focus and values. What do you think culturally, societally enabled them to want to make this leap? Because we're struggling. We're struggling with AI adoption here in more technologically advanced organizational groups in society. And we're fighting AI in a lot of respects and slow walking it. And Ghana jumped in head first. They're the number one ranked global mobile payments money or digital money adoption. What do you think about their culture helped that to occur, that they were so willing to embrace something new?
Yeah, I think one is just a matter of convenience.
Mhm.
But what I
Okay.
think is the secret ingredient is that there is an ability to connect with people using already existing technologies that doesn't have to be intricate,
Yeah.
but also provides them a chance to do business without having the big fancy, banks and all of these things. Literally, this is your bank account. You don't even need to go to the bank. You can put money on there. They have these kiosks and offices. You can
Okay.
go if you have cash. You can have them deposit that on your phone. And this is not just the banking place. It's a shop. It's a way to contribute to your whatever you need to. And so all of that convenience enabling them to keep their connections is what makes the difference. So if you
Oh, now that's
live,
an interesting statement.
yeah, if you live in the city and you need to send home money,
Mm-hmm.
you can just do that. You don't need to go to a Western Union or anything else. You can just do that on your phone. And even when you live in the United States and you want to send remittance to someone, you can
Mm-hmm.
easily send it to their phone number, right? Like these systems have allowed us to stay connected without inviting unnecessary bureaucracy and
Yes.
all of the things that, kind of put a burden and a strain on
Mm-hmm.
building relationships and taking
Mm-hmm.
care of business in the traditional way that we've already done before.
I mean, it's beautiful because I, I I have to believe that the people who created that technology, they weren't trying to bridge connection between families. They were trying to make the movement of financial transactions simplified and less friction.
Correct.
But to have the impact of keeping people more simply connected to do what they need to do, to do the transactional things that occur in families. Um, that's remarkable, and another example of the technology having unintended consequences that are really positive,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And like I use that example to highlight possibilities, right? Because you
Yes.
think of this, and this actually has some amount of cost involved. Like you have to put in money
Mhm.
to take it out.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
imagine technology that is for education, technology that shares knowledge and stuff where you don't
Mhm.
necessarily have to deposit your knowledge. It just gives you access to the knowledge. And it's helping medical professionals access a world of knowledge to better diagnose their patient. Like
Yes.
that level of adoption will
Mhm.
change the world eventually, because the cultural context will still be harnessed by the people, but
Mhm.
having access to a broader library of knowledge for better diagnoses would
Mhm.
even improve the services that professionals are rendering. I
Mhm.
think that is a big, for me, that's what I advocate for when I thinking of technology adoption in places like Ghana.
Um, I have to tell a story. 'Cause
Yes,
I'm on
please.
this I'm on this, but, I saw a presentation from the city of Amarillo, um, a few months ago, and they had used AI, and because to me, it's just such a beautiful story of helping people in unintended ways. They have tons of languages spoken in the city of Amarillo, so from a city services perspective, that was really complex to be able to service, 15 languages, with a human who picks up the phone to say, "Help," "I'm here to help you pay your water bill." So they consolidated all of their city services into a single voice line that was AI, LLM, large language model enabled, to cover the languages and to get some synergies and efficiencies with people being able to call in and be able to more in a more automated way handle their city transactions. There's also a very aged population, an elderly population in Amarillo. And the voice capabilities in the system were so conversational and so good. Seniors started calling into the system just to talk,
Oh,
just to visit with a voice because it was programmed to be
yeah.
very conversational and welcoming and it was a trend with elderly people calling in. So the city of Amarillo looked at it and said, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but and said, this is a service, and it really doesn't cost us that much, and it's not costing us really anything extra, that's material at all, but it's doing something for our peoples. They started planting, like, Easter eggs in the
Wow.
system to give to people who don't necessarily have, the connections that we've talked about as they've aged or they're relegated to being home, and so I love that it was something completely unintended, like the bank payment system in Ghana via phone, via mobile. But I love how the city of Amarillo saw this as an opportunity. They didn't see it as, oh, that's not why we developed this.
All right.
They saw it as making the world a better place through something completely not designed for
Yeah.
that.
Yes. And I'm so excited by examples like that because
Yeah.
I personally advocate for outcomes that
Yes.
are outside of corporate productivity when it comes to businesses employing AI.
Mhm.
And what I mean by
Mhm.
that is if you're a business that's supposed to bring, I don't know, educate people, for example, your use of AI should be geared towards people learning something, not your employees being able to send emails efficiently, right? If you're an
Love it.
organization and your
Mhm.
purpose at the end, adopt an AI, of course, downstream, if your employees have more time to spend on other things, it's possible that it will transcend onto the customers. But I think when you're adopting AI, your goal should be the initial assessment. Because I have noticed overwhelmingly corporate productivity has been funded, researched, and developed at a faster rate than any of the outcomes of the same
Of
organization.
course. Uh-huh.
And that's troubling. But then I think of places like Ghana and why
Mhm.
and how developing AI and now large language models internally or culturally
Mhm.
fitting
Mhm.
is beneficial. Because
Mhm.
then that deployment isn't just about taking what some company did to help employees do better, but it'll be well suited to the context. And if the context, I believe, is family oriented, people oriented, it translates. And it'll be much easier for them to deploy systems that are not just about the individual productivity, but the communities benefiting out
Yes.
from this at whole. Because I'm very big on advocating for deploying and developing local bred local systems
Yeah.
for these local setups.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm reflecting on your statement, which is a fact, and it's common sense as well that the majority of the development is in business, in corporate settings, and intended and designed to fund, um, um, to fund improvements to how we do business, right?
Right, right.
Um, what are you going to say? Go ahead.
Well, there is, and I just remember a company in Ghana, Health AI, right? And they developed a large language model that is able to help exponentially the capacity of healthcare workers, right? If they able to
Mm,
develop this system
mhm.
that could just that could more than answer questions, but it could also interpret radiology images. It could
Okay.
be set up onto a
Mhm.
microscope and it could look at
Mhm.
slides to determine if the slide has malaria or whatever in it. Now
Yeah.
we're talking about places that have one doctor for every 1,500 people or one doctor for every 1,000 people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Developing these systems accounts for those deficiencies. And when they do it correctly, like how this company is doing it, I believe once there's wide adoption of technologies like that, the health inequity gap is going to diminish drastically,
100%. Yes.
right? Now, even
Yes.
one doctor could essentially function as eight or
Mhm.
six or five because of these tools. We're
Mhm.
starting to see a quality of health improvement and that also lends itself to better economic opportunities for the people and so on and so forth. I'm an avid believer in that as well.
Mhm. Mhm. I, healthcare is one of my biggest, hopes for the future with AI. I think we're just scratching the surface because here in the US, there's so much overhead, regulatory overhead to push through. So I understand that, but I really, for me, I see, the predictive traits that AI excels at. I also see, you know, the burden that you mentioned of the ratio of patients to doctors, and so much can be scaled. And frankly, what one doctor knows is a fraction of what one human brain knows is a fraction of the corpus of information that's available. I'm excited for the medical community about the ability to help doctors by prescribing treatment plans, and people would say, oh, but that's letting the machine do the work of the doctor. Actually, no, that's enabling the doctor. Because if there are patterns in that patient's health history and it's obvious, that because, I would venture to guess, and you're the expert on medical data, but I would venture to guess that the majority of conditions are routine. I mean, even chronic diseases like I'm a type 1 diabetic, but as a well-managed type 1 diabetic, um, it's a pretty routine. This blood work means make this course correction. Doctors don't have to independently determine that. I mean, the systems can do it, spit out a treatment plan that a doctor then says, yep, that feels right, sounds right, appropriate, and moves it on. And I think that is going to help medicine scale. My anxiety is around scaling that to all of society, right? In a world, I don't know what the medical system is in Ghana, but in a world in the U.S. where insurance is a privilege, good insurance, good care is often a factor of the type of insurance you're able to carry and afford. I think some of these availabilities that are going to enhance the efficiency of doctors needs to result in better coverage of care for everyone, and that's a policy level change that will take time.
You've articulated it so well. It's 100% true. The difference, though, in certain places is that there is a governmental assumption of that responsibility that translates into
Yes.
universal healthcare, right? Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
a big assumption that the healthcare of these people is partly the responsibility of the government, and providing that is also the responsibility of the. That doesn't mean there aren't different tiers, and you couldn't get private healthcare that might be better. But there's a universality around the base healthcare that we don't have here in the United States. And
Yeah.
so I think that's what the difference becomes, right? Because if the government in a country like that has universal health adopts and starts to implement these systems, we're going to see a much faster improvement in the quality of
Yes.
healthcare across the board. Versus places like the US where it's very subjective based on what you can afford, who your HCP is, and all of those complicated stuff. But all that to say, the opportunity still exists, right?
Yes.
And that is what gives me goosebumps certain days, right? It's like we still have so much opportunity to do this at a level that is impressive, at a level that is broad and comprehensive. And perhaps it's just a matter of policy changes, but the opportunity exists, and I'm hopeful that one day a lot more people will benefit from it
Yeah.
than we are today.
Yeah. Well, I think this naturally leads to a conversation on longevity. There's 4 principles, if you will, that I focus this podcast on. It's work, changes in technology, changes in longevity, and then changes in purpose. So this health conversation moves into longevity with all the data that you touch all the time, that you have visibility to macro trends. What do you see things like changes in the actual treatment of patients and diagnosis and all those individual level improvements? How do you see that affecting us from a longevity perspective as a population?
I think overall, for the U.S. population, we're seeing a trend of people living longer generally, right? People are living longer. And it's the result of a lot of things: food, life, lifestyle, working out, and all of those things. But now there's a new trend or a newer trend, which is precision medicine. right? And personalized medicine. So then now we're not
Yes.
looking at treatment on a general scale anymore. We're now looking at treatment, at least for personalized medicine, on
Mm-hmm.
everybody who shares characteristics that you have. But now we're looking at Tanya based on you, who you are, where you live, your diet, and everything
Mm-hmm.
else that
Mm-hmm.
is the composition. How will this treatment look like for you? And I think we're at the very, 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 very early stages of this. But there are
Mm-hmm.
companies looking at that, so that we can personalize the treatment to you, so that we know this might be a painkiller for everyone else, but for
Mm-hmm.
you, because of X, Y, and Z, we
Mm-hmm.
need this amount of dose accompanied with this other ingredient, but just for you, and we'll deliver that to you at the dose that you need. And that's
Yep.
where I think the new trend is going to improve longevity. We're
Yeah.
close there. All the major healthcare companies are looking at ways to deliver personalized medicine. I think
Yes.
that's where we can start to look at if we're looking at longevity over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To add to what you're talking about and make it maybe more appreciated at an individual level, one of the startups that I've done some work with is making an insulin pump that's about the size of a nickel.
Wow.
It's amazing. Uses nanopump technology, but it is the beginning of a delivery device for personalized medicine because they're going to cut that pump into sections, and it'll require a reformulation of injectable medications. But if you have migraines, if you have, if you get sore after you play pickleball, to be able to load multiple medications for the recurring issues that you experience and be able to treat those or have sensors that realize what's happening in your body even before you do. If my blood sugar goes low as a type 1 diabetic, everybody knows because it's beeping on my
Thanks.
phone. But we're going to get to those sensors being able to be worn by average normal people who just played pickleball too hard, and be able to measure what's happening in the body, and be able to use devices to live better because
Yeah.
they'll get the warnings, and then they'll have access to easy administration of these medications. And I think that is a very exciting way to move forward. And of course, then you of course hook that into reporting to the doctors what's happening so that those trends can be addressed if they need to be addressed at a higher level with your physician. But it's moving. Technology is moving us
It,
into an
it's and
amazing
it's
space.
fantastic, and I
Yeah.
think that's driving every single touch point of the treatment process. So
Yes,
your
it is.
doctor is going to get the information faster, but now even manufacturing the specific dosage you need, right? So now
Yes.
the manufacturers have to start to come up with systems that would enable them to capture the information and
Mhm.
produce at a considerably fast rate. So then you can get it. So then it's not like you go to your doctor 1 week and then you have to wait 3 months to get it, like a car. But they
Right.
have to speed up processing and
Mhm.
production. So
Mhm.
that is allowing every touch point of this process to get some innovation, to produce some ways to do things better so we can get things well. And I think that's the exciting part, right? Is the part that the average person doesn't really consider. But it's going to get you a time where it's going to be considerably faster than it is today.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, my mind races with all the applications of this kind of technology to change people's lives. I have a few friends who have chronic migraines that come on frequently and unannounced, and to be able to wear something the size of a nickel that with other sensors that might be on your body to say, oh, elevated X,
Right.
whatever that is, and to help you, get ahead of the curve on losing a day to a bad migraine is I think most people would wear a device that's the size of a nickel,
I agree. I agree
right?
with you. I think
Yeah,
that's the blessing of technology, right? That
it is.
we is the big thank God we have this moment for,
Mm-hmm.
no matter who you are, there is some kind of technology that you're grateful for. And perhaps for me, because of my work, technology that give people better quality of
Yes.
their
Yeah.
lives is what I'm always excited about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are there, because you're very technologically aware at a broad level, not just healthcare, are there other areas that you think AI will have a significant impact on the world with that you're looking forward to?
I think biggest aspect is education.
Mm-hmm.
And, when when I was growing up, right, the kinds of access you had to education and knowledge
Mm-hmm.
was pretty much the library and the books that were there.
Yeah.
And so the books in the library were outdated. Access to knowledge concerning the subject matter
Mm-hmm.
is most likely outdated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so for me, being able to compute all of this knowledge that's relevant, that's
Mm-hmm.
reset
Yeah.
into a device like a laptop is one of the biggest because there are inspirations that I've gotten from reading books from John Grisham
Mm-hmm.
and all of these great authors that I just stumbled upon by accident in a library somewhere.
Yeah.
And the same way when I'm using my chat GPT or Gemini, that I stumble upon pieces of knowledge just by asking curious questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of education for children to explore their environment, to
Yeah.
learn about their history and their culture, and to explore ideas of what they can do with that knowledge
Mm-hmm.
to be the single most powerful thing ever, right? That access readily available in the palm of your hand, if
Mm-hmm.
used correctly, will definitely elevate our intelligence. Like, I don't know what the metric is, but whatever it is now, if we're able to consistently develop that, our children will all begin at a level higher than we were when we were their age. And I think that's exciting.
Big question for you related to this.
Yes.
How do we teach or encourage people to be curious?
I think curious people never left their childhood behind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's an
And
interesting visual I have.
yeah, curious people never let their childhood behind. Like children, babies, infancy is the most curious version of yourself.
Okay.
Like you want to taste their fingers, babies put
Mm-hmm.
their fingers in their mouth. You're so curious about every single thing. And the more you grow out of that, the less curious you're becoming. And so what I think of curious people, there is a childlike version of themselves that never dies.
Mm.
And if you can always have people connect to that, they will remain curious. And some people lose that because of trauma, or
Yeah.
they lose that because of their perception of the world they live in now.
Mm-hmm.
But if you
Mm-hmm.
can rekindle that connection, and if you can keep people in touch with that version of themselves that is
Yep.
still a child, they will remain curious. And there might be different ways to do that. But on a very broad level, that's how I equate curious
Yeah.
minds
Yeah.
with lifespan.
Yeah. Um, I think there's something in there about communal societies. I'm going back to Ghana again, but communal societies being able to promote value more broadly because everybody's listening and everybody wants to take advantage in a good way of what's available to them. And I think there's something to be learned from, I say organizations, but it's societies that operate with a different mindset that keeps people curious because there's an intrinsic reward in that behavior because of what you get to do or accomplish. Do you see that with the
Yeah.
differences like between Ghana and let's say naysayers about AI in the US? Do you see kind of a difference in and it's a personal value, societal input?
Yes. So when I think of that concept, right, there are like a double-edged sword, right?
Okay.
In communal societies, the reward tends to be for specialists who are still contributing or still remaining within their a certain defined,
Mm-hmm.
parameter, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
this is your role as part of this organization.
Mm-hmm.
If you can do that exceptionally well, you get additional reward.
Yeah.
But all of that is kind of based in an understood system of value.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is if the group agrees
Yeah.
that this is our structure, you play this role, that person plays this role, it's fine. However, with technology such as AI, in itself is disruptive and it
Yes.
hasn't settled into the group. And
Mm-hmm.
so the individuals in their specializations can leverage AI to bring more value for that role that they play. And that's how I see it working. And so if you're the designated part of this big tree that's
Yeah.
growing
Okay.
through and
Yes.
you're getting more nutrients, you're just going to grow bigger fruits. There's going to be a part that's just supposed to grow the leaves and they're leveraging technology or their nutrients. They're going to grow bigger, broader leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think in a way, that's what I mean by a double-edged sword, because not all of the society is leveraging the benefits at the same time, but the few that are
Mm-hmm.
using it for the benefit of the society
Yep.
will allow that amplified benefit to reach everyone else.
Heard everything you said, and I agree with it. But the challenge we keep having in the conversations here are a genuine fear of losing human connection. Um, in Ghana, it's increasing community and human connection. And here that is the excuse for not embracing and being more curious about these technologies. Do you think it's more difficult to maintain human connection as our world becomes more global and more digital? Is there a way around that? If it does separate people, what
Yeah.
ways have you seen potentially based on how Ghana responds to technology to make it
So
easier to maintain human connectivity?
I look at it this way. It becomes the best of what you employ it to be, or the
Okay.
worst of what you wish it would be. So
Well,
it
a lot of
depends on
life is like that, right?
is whether you are employing it for good or
Hmm.
you're wishing it for worse. And so
Yeah.
if you already have a weak foundation,
Hmm.
the technology is not going to necessarily prove that.
Okay.
Excuse me. And what I mean is this. If you're in a society that is individualistic, in a society that thrives and promotes individual ideas and
Yep.
individualism,
Yep.
your employment of technology will not do the contrary. It is
Hmm.
just going to enhance that system and it's going to make the individual even better to
Hmm.
relieve any dependencies on other people, at
Hmm.
least at the very default. In the other way around, if you have a system that encourages community, that encourages interdependency and celebrates connection,
Hmm.
when you employ technology that is suitable for that, it is just going to enhance how we connect. It's just going to enhance how we operate in a community
Mhm.
rather than dividing, unless we wish for it to do otherwise,
Mhm.
right? And so if you wish for the technology to do something otherwise, that wouldn't be the default setting. And that would require a lot more work. So in the
Mhm.
individualistic system, if they want technology to bring them together, it'll require more work. It won't be the default technology they have. In the communal system, if they want it to be individual, whatever they get, it'll require more work and it won't be the default. And that's what we have to be mindful of, is what we want to achieve and how we use the technology to achieve the goal. But by default, it will enhance whatever system exists.
I think most people listening to you talk would agree that we want to be more communal, more society oriented, but they don't know how. Um, and with a lot that's happening in the U.S. now, with the division that exists, we're not. But uh, I think people are overwhelmed by the scale and the breadth of the differences. It's just too big. I can't fix this because it's not my street or my neighborhood. It's such a big divide, and so many people are involved that it's harder to think communally. So, do you have any wisdom or advice about?
I think, you know, unless you're looking at it holistically,
Yeah.
assuming only certain aspects of communal living doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's an all or nothing kind of lifestyle
Mm-hmm.
and system. And so in places like Ghana, families still live together, right? Like you don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have to leave your family house. You don't have to leave your father's house unless you want to. But there's
Mm-hmm.
going to be opportunity for you to still remain connected with your family,
Yeah.
right? There are families that have enough resources that it's a huge compound. And if you wish to not live in the same building that you were born in,
Mm-hmm.
you can
Mm-hmm.
put up a building right next door to your dad and it still belongs to your family. So
Yes.
then you're not that far away, right?
Yeah.
These are deliberate cultural elements.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you have these deliberate elements, you can only aspire to the benefits. Like, I want to do this. But
Yep.
if you go to school and at the age of 18, you're in college, by 21, 22, it's kind of a normal thing to move out the house and start your own family.
Mm-hmm.
Already, that disconnect is not communal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if your children do that, there's going to be a continuous distance. Where I'm
Mm-hmm.
from, we don't have nursing homes. Like the elderly people live with the family. Nobody's
Yeah.
sending anybody to a nurse. We don't have nursing homes. They're
Yeah.
part of the family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those
Mm-hmm.
are what I mean by holistic approach. Like you don't just want to be communal when you're young or when you're in your mid 40s. You want to
Mm-hmm.
be communal from birth to death. That's an all or nothing approach. That's the only way it works.
In the meantime, it occurs to me in my U.S. limited mindset that one of the best ways for people who can, not everyone can, but one of the best ways to expand how you think about communal ways of being is when you're able to travel. Like you were just home in Ghana for 2 or 3 weeks. And I think before
Yeah.
we started recording, your words were that it was it inspiring or I can't remember, but it was you were so happy for the change in scenery to be home.
It filled me up. It
It
filled my
filled you up.
soul. It filled me up. And I think that it gives me an opportunity to appreciate
Yeah.
the differences in the lifestyles, but also the opportunities that
Yeah.
can be leveraged by the two
Yes.
different systems, right? And there's so much synergies that can be leveraged. There are things
Mhm.
that we can learn from, societies that are communal, and there are advantages that it could also glean from how we approach life here in the West.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And being able to build that bridge is exceptionally exciting, right? To take back a mindset of improving systems using artificial intelligence or improving systems or just a design thinking mindset
Yes, I'm with you.
to be a platform for communal living. It's exceptional. And also bringing that communal approach, building systems so that individuals are not just treated in a way that they exist in a vacuum, but the
Mhm.
connection to a larger group also has its benefits. And being able to identify those things, always fills me up. And it
Mm-hmm.
inspires me to continue the work I do on a daily basis, right? So
I
I
love it.
know it's going to impact the direction of these ideas.
In my history, I led Asia for several years. And so I would go to India like every 4 to 6 weeks. But if I went too long, like over Christmas break, and I had to extend the time, I found myself getting antsy because being in most of my travel was to India. I had a large team in Bangalore and did a bunch of acquisitions in Hyderabad. So that was like my home base, if you will, in Asia. But when I had distance in between the trips, I got edgy. And I knew it was because I needed to go get back in touch with how I felt when I was in such a remarkably different place, a different pace, different values, but also to be able to see humanity in a whole different way and love it. Like
Yeah.
almost be attached to have a dependency on being fed by being there
Yeah.
by societies that had way different, I'm gonna say, I don't know how to say it well, but standards of living, right? Um, how people live physically, indoor plumbing, those things, is radically different for the majority of India than it is for here. But I saw such a sweetness in people
Yeah.
and such an accepting and tolerant people of everything from religion to ideas to how to raise your kids. And being close to that gave me so much gratitude. And
Yes.
it filled me up, to use your
Yes.
word, so that I could come back here and face this rat race. Now,
Feel
beyond,
rejuvenated.
I was rejuvenated and I
Mhm.
needed it. And you're
Yes.
making me think I haven't been back to India in a while. So
You,
because
you
my
should go.
corporate situation, my work situation changed, so I don't go to India. But it's important to me to experience those changes in our daily routines
Yeah.
that allow us to think more broadly and put more different kinds of love in our hearts.
It's 1,000,000%, right? And the fact that we can have the exact same experience in
Mhm.
different places goes to
Mhm.
show that what we're talking about is real. This is only in God or only in India. It is of human connection. And
Mhm.
there is a vacuum that exists if you stay in one place for so long. And
Yes.
so whenever you change that environment, you fill that side up, right?
Yeah.
So then you become whole again. Whether you've been born there or lived there, the human connections that exist in different parts of the world are essential for your being, whether you
Oh,
know it or
yeah.
not,
Mhm.
right? Whether you acknowledge it or not, I am almost certain that every human being living everywhere in the world does get some benefit from just interacting with other people, whether
Mhm.
they're from their culture or not. And
Mhm.
and the minute I realized that, I found myself having more clarity in direction and purpose. Right. It's like people are people wherever you go,
Mhm.
but people touch you differently wherever you go.
Yes.
And the minute you accept and take that and fill yourself with that and
Mhm.
align your purpose to the benefits that the divine has positioned for you through those interactions,
Mhm.
the better suited you are for your own personal fulfillment, but also to contribute to the betterment of society.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer of that.
Well, and I feel like it informs your purpose. the broader you, but definitely for you, I think your purpose is tied to humanity, right? You're not
Yes.
just thinking about the softball game this weekend. You are definitely thinking much more broadly about how what you do serves mankind.
And I think that's the benefit of growing up in a culture that appreciates connectivity and collectiveness,
Mhm.
right? And so by default, the assumed role is, what does that bring to my community? Like, what does this bring to my community? Kind of like the
Yeah.
default,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Mindset.
right, if you do anything contrary, it'll actually take more effort. Because by default,
Mm.
you're thinking of, bringing the benefit to the collective. And so I think that's one of the good benefits of growing up, being inculcated with these values
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
sharing a family experience that I have today.
I love it. As we wind down, we've talked just a tad about purpose. Where do you think your purpose leads you next? Generally speaking, what? Because
Generally.
you are always going to be growing. You could be an 85-year-old man and still be growing.
Exactly, baby.
So, do you see your next milestone where that's headed?
Hey, for me, and this is been a prayer point for me, speaking candidly. It's that I'm open to the direction that the divine pushes me toward. And so, I try to avail myself to its purpose. That's how I avail myself to God's purpose. But one thing I know for certain is it's going to be really in improving access to quality inventions and medical treatments for people in whatever form it comes. Maybe it might be as a general counsel, it might be as a regulatory person, a policy person, a tech specialist, a scientist in the lab. But I have come to accept that. And I all continued praying to be aligned to a different version of that. But on the broader scale of things, I think it is enabling good quality access to medicine and treatments. I think that is the underlying, and I can't say for certain what the next thing
Mhm.
will be,
Mhm.
but it
Yeah.
will be along.
Well, then we will have to keep an eye on you. The thing that I think of based on what you said is how you are mindful about purpose, but doing or finding or being clear on your purpose is it is not driving you. There is a deep confidence that you will be shown the next
Yes,
milestone and step, and so you're patient for that is the simple way I would say it. There's no, "Oh, I've gotta figure this out," because you
right.
won't figure it out. It will come. What you are destined to do will be put in front of you to do.
Yeah, and 100% of the time, it has not failed me when I put my faith in this idea, in this in the divine knowledge and the revelation. hundred
Mhm.
percent of the time, it hasn't failed me. And so I get more confident every time I think
Yes.
about what the next step be, knowing that
Mhm.
in the right time, it's going to be revealed to me. I
Yeah,
just have to keep going towards the goal. And that is all the motivation I need daily when I pray about this and get that sense settled in me. And I just keep going.
I think it's beautiful, and I think we all can learn just by listening to you. I mean, you're an incredibly influential soul to share with
Thank
us.
you.
No, I mean that. I mean that. I'm struck by your wisdom and your quiet confidence about about moving forward in the world. And then your view of how we do it together, right? Cuz that I think that is a consistent thread for you is that that communal upbringing has made your mindset very societal we instead of the individualistic trends that we've seen. So yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate you, Tanya. I think, you giving me this opportunity and just giving me a chance to share and actually kind of helping me bring out these ideas. There's some of these things I have not thought about. I didn't write any of this, but it is just the natural conversation we've had since day one. There is
Mhm,
a very incredible chemistry that allows me to, bring out these good
mhm,
good
mhm.
qualities, and I'm able to articulate these ideas. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity,
You
and
no,
I hope your
it's actually a
audience,
gift to our audience because for them to be able to have exposure to you that they would not otherwise get. And even, I think even for you, friends, family, you probably we societal are so, we're so stuck in our boxes of work. And
yes,
work and purpose are very closely tied. But we tend to stay in the transactional, what I'm working on, my last promotion, my last big sale. We tend to stay transactional, and I think what you and I have been able to do is get a few layers under that into why we do what we do and what we want for the future.
100%. Very,
Yeah.
very, very true. And I appreciate it. I think this is a very healthy conversation for me. So, I'm looking forward to sharing this and getting perceptions and perspectives from other people, and how these, because I think there is a lot of these questions and these things
Hmm.
that we all need to think about. And we
Yes.
all need to share perspectives
Mhm.
and ideas and exchange views on. And I'm very happy we've managed to start this conversation, because I'm very, very, very sure someone is going to listen to this conversation and say, "Hi, I haven't thought about this." And I think that is the beauty of having a reset. That is the
Mhm.
greatness of having a platform that shines the light on things that matter to people and matter to the world. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
You are most welcome. Is if people do um, feel so compelled that they want to follow you or be in touch with you about your ideas, because wouldn't it be interesting if you and I were able to put together a cohort of people who want to talk about these things? I mean, I'll
And
throw that out there. I think you and I
that
could
would
be
be a
marvelous.
dream. That would
Wouldn't
be
it?
a dream.
A
That would be a
mastermind of
dream.
people who just want to talk about what could be and how to make it happen.
That would be a dream. That would be a dream. I'm very active on LinkedIn. My name Enoch Allotey
Good.
on LinkedIn. I'm not so active anywhere else.
Good. That's enough.
But very active on LinkedIn. You can reach out, and we can have conversations. And like I said, my dad always says, "No man is an island,"
That's right.
and so no one has ever been able to achieve anything great by themselves. I don't care what the narrative was. No
Mhm.
one is able to do it by themselves. And whether
Mhm.
they acknowledge the people they meet on the way up or not, there are people they meet on the way up. And so I'm always open and welcoming to all the interesting and very diverse and intelligent people who want to engage and find some kind of common place for peace, for development, for great things to happen. And I'm
Mhm.
always open. And feel free to reach out.
Wonderful. And that's a generous offer. And selfishly, I hope it leads you back to me, because I would
100%.
love to be in partnership with you, to have these interesting conversations with people who want to be actively creating better lives, better communities,
Yes.
in whatever way we can. So
Yes.
maybe we can all put a trip together to go to Ghana, and you can
Let's
be the
do
tour
it.
guide.
Let's
That
do
would be
it.
great.
I
So
guarantee you're going to have so much fun. You might not want to come back.
that's a possibility. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Wonderful. Enoch,
Yes.
you are You are just amazing, and I feel
Thank
so
you.
fortunate that our paths crossed. They've not crossed; they've merged. Because we are now walking that yellow brick road. I wrote a book called AI and the New Oz, so I
Let's
sometimes
go,
throw out Wizard
Dorothy.
of Oz, and I'm like, oh, there's no context here. But we are walking that yellow brick road together, and I'm grateful, and I look forward to the next time I'm able to have a conversation with you.
The feeling is absolutely mutual. Thank you very much. And thank you for your audience sticking it out with us.
Perfect. So, everyone, this is Reset, where purpose meets possibility and walks arm in arm down that yellow brick road so we can build a better world together. So, thank you from Enoch and Tanya signing off. Have a wonderful week. Take care. Goodbye. Thanks for joining us on Reset. Remember, transformation is a journey, not a destination. So until next time, keep exploring what's possible. I'm Tanya Long, and this is Home. This is Reset.